All right. I think we're live now, Jen. I think I did it. We should be live. Jen, can you check on that for me? Can you check if we're live on Facebook, YouTube, and Instagram?
Yeah. I'm gonna go down to my computer. Give me a sec, but I'll let you know if you're not.
Yeah, I think we are. All right. Hmm. Yeah. All right, Carl. I should be live, Carl, but this is kind of what I'm talking about, man. So, like going live on social media and all that other stuff, like that's completely new to me. Even running a challenge, right? So,
Yeah.
like get on here, make a, you know, make a clown of myself, make some mistakes, but then tomorrow and the next day, I'm going to learn what not to do. Um
Well,
and, and eventually, I'll look like I actually know what I'm doing.
well, but the cool part of it is, you have the adventurous spirit to go do it. So, uh,
Yeah.
and that's kind of where you are.
Yeah, well, you do too, man. I mean, we all do. It's just we've been told for so long to not do things like that. We've been told that, hey, don't put yourself out there. Um, People say stuff and they're going to talk about you and it's going to hurt you for some way. But in reality, if you think about it, the only thing that really hurts is not doing anything because now you never know,
This is true,
right?
and I just gotta get out of my own head, get back into taking the actions I need to take, and once I do that, then the rest is fall in place.
100%, man. Yup, 100%. And reference that, man. You are, you are have all of my attention right now. So I don't know where we're live at. Supposedly we're live on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and all these things. But again, right, we're just gonna figure it out. But anyway, my purpose right now, Carl, we're gonna go ahead and get started. And if I can't do anything else, I'm gonna help you overcome your fear of taking action because the lack of action will cause failure every time. The only way to move ahead is to take action. So I'm going to introduce you to skill stack. And I know I kind of introduced this the other day with you a little bit, but let's just jump in here. So how do we learn? So in school, you sit down and you're watching this teacher teach, and then they assign work, and then after this work piles up, now all of a sudden you have a test. And then when you take the test, this is the mind blowing part, you get something wrong, and then they give you a grade, but they don't tell you how to fix it. Instead, they're like, you messed up. And they're giving you this bad grade, and they're essentially programming us to understand making mistakes as a problem. And therefore, we never want to take action again because we're scared that we're going to actually mess up. Right? Does this make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I just got a message. We had a big rental problem over the weekend too with plumbing, right? And I just got a message saying, "Hey, did you cut lines into unit 3 and 4?" Right? So I
Why
know
would you do that?
we had a huge sewage issue, man. We had to replace over like 80 feet of main sewage line.
Right.
Yeah. So yeah. So essentially, it's going back to skill stacking, right? In the beginning, whenever I started flipping homes and running into all these issues, I didn't know what I was doing. And you would hire a contractor, hire a plumber, hire an electrician. They would come in, they're supposed to be the experts. Then all of a sudden, the building inspector comes out, and you quickly realize that the experts, well, they're not so expert. So Now you have, issues after issues, and then they cut corners. So for instance, like this plumbing job, instead of replacing all of my cast iron like they was supposed to, and I didn't know anything about plumbing back then. Instead what they did was they section out a piece of the cast iron pipe and then put a clean out there and then told me that it was fixed. And now I'm suffering those consequences. So circling back to how do we learn, we have to unprogram ourselves of thinking and being afraid of making mistakes, because mistakes is how we learn. So the quicker we can make mistakes, the better we're going to actually be. So let's just skip through this. So what is wisdom? So let's talk about being wise, right? So my dad, he always tells me, he's like, son, respect your elders, right? That's how I was raised. So I respect all my elders. But then also he would capitalize with that. He says, hey, if someone is older than you, then they are wiser than you. And what I learned and experienced, me and him actually has talks about this, and it makes sense. But if one person who is 85 years old, never been married, started working at age 17, worked the same job, same position their entire life, and they have plenty of leave saved up, but they haven't ever done anything, how much wisdom do they actually have versus a 22-year-old who's been married 3 years, started working at age 17, worked 5 different jobs already, 5 different positions, traveled to 5 countries? Like, how much life have they already experienced in 22 years versus the 85-year-old who hasn't done anything, right? They've done one thing. Now, they're probably really good at that one thing, but where's the wisdom at? And wisdom comes with making mistakes. That's the reason you want to, like, if you wanted to get a really good doctor, right? We think that the more expensive they are, right? So if we had to have a heart transplant, we wouldn't go for the cheaper doctor. Well, also the cheaper doctor would equate to less experience. And the more expensive doctor would equate to more experience. We're paying for wisdom. Well, the only way that the doctors can get wisdom is to jump in there and hopefully not make mistakes with heart surgery. But at the same time, they have to go through the reps and they have to learn what to do and what not to do. And then they're going to have situations where, like, they have no choice but to just to figure it out. And the more times they figure it out, the wiser they become. And if that is true, then the same is true for us, right? The more mistakes we make, the wiser we become. The issue is we're afraid of making mistakes because the school system programmed us not to do anything, right? So with experience, practical exposure versus learning by doing, trial and error. And then you've got learning from others, understanding principles, and reflection on institutions. So wisdom involves reflecting on one's experiences and trusting one's intuition. Look inward and tap into the subconscious mind for deeper insights and guidance. And the reason I read that one little section right here on the bottom right, number 3, is because reflection is key. So like, Carl, you're like, hey, well, maybe I don't have the confidence. Well, that's fine, right? That's the first step of reflecting. You're like, hey, maybe that is true. Well, if that is true, now it's simple. What do you need to do next in order to get the confidence? Maybe that is role playing. Maybe that is calling a buyer, getting some reps in, and then reflecting back and saying, hey, I should have done this better. I could have done this differently. Instead of being afraid to get the C and the D and the F, instead, let's just go ahead and do it. Take action, right? So it is oops, what happened to this thing? It is impossible to live without failing at something unless you live so cautiously that you might as well not have lived at all. In which case you fail by default. J.K. Rowling. This is one of my favorite quotes because, let me remove my picture here where you can see the whole thing. Because if you fail by default, then what causes that is our inaction. Like, what causes that is all of those programmed thoughts and those programmed beliefs of society which prevents us from ever taking that step forward, no matter how big or how small. And if we never, ever take a risk, no matter how big or how small, by default, we still fail. Does that make sense, Carl?
Yes, it does. And that's kind of where I am is I'm back. Well, a year and a half, 2 years ago, I started this journey, got my website up, got, all this stuff going. And then at some point, it just like, wait, what am I doing again?
Yeah. Yeah. So let's talk about that discovery, right? A lot of people mistake learning for discovery. And let me explain. So there's discovery, then we learn, then we execute. And then we're going to run into our first obstacle. And when we hit our first obstacle, this is the thing that makes or breaks us, because there's no such thing as going through the wall. There's no such thing as going over the wall. The only option we actually have is to turn around and go back. But when we turn around and go back, we do have two paths that we can take. We can choose to go back to where we were and never pursue this again. Or we can turn around, go back, take those extra thoughts, those lessons that we just learned, and turn them into concepts, turn them into wisdom, and put them into our habits. And now we're skill stacking. And that's the cycle. You take a puzzle piece that you gain. Maybe that puzzle piece is just from watching me right now explain to you what skill stacking is. This is your first puzzle piece, because now you can understand it and you're like, okay, well, this is just the process. So if this is the process, what's the next step that I need to take? And that is what we just talked about, right? Maybe it's calling your first buyer and actually understanding what their buy box is. And if you get hung up on, great. If you don't get hung up on, awesome. If you actually have a conversation, actually get a buyer, great. There is no bad outcome to actually taking action. The only bad outcome is whenever you do something and you fail to learn at it. So if you understand skill stacking, you take the puzzle piece, you go and actually discover the thing, you reflect on it, you execute the thing, and now you have new data points, you have new wisdom, like you have more wisdom that you can take back and continue to grow, right? Like right now, like I'm live and I don't even know where I'm live at. And like, there's probably somebody out there who's laughing at me, making fun of me, whatever that is, but I don't care because I'm doing it and they are not. And in 1 week, 1 month, 2 months, 3 months from now, I'm going to be way better than I am right now. But if I sit here and I have fear of taking action, getting out there, actually talking, I'll never get better, right? There's no way to get better because I have no feedback. And that feedback loop is what we need. Does that make sense?
Oh, it does. And it just, I had been lost in my own head and just like, kind of, anyway, I haven't been taking action and that's on me, but that's something that I can change. And
Absolutely.
then I can go back and move forward.
Absolutely. Right. You just said that's something you can change. So what you just said was you have a choice. All you need to do is decide. But when you decide, you need to take action immediately. Right? Because what'll happen is all these other thoughts will come in and they're going to plant seeds that prevents you from taking action. And then you're going to be right back where you were. But if you can commit to doing what we talked about the other day, calling until you get those 5 anchor buyers, you're going to be way ahead of the game. Like way ahead of the game. And it's a very easy task, right? So this is like a little short story that I put together for skill stacking. So this guy is waving, the little curtain there in front of the bull, right? They're taking action. Well, then he's going to discover really quick that doesn't work. And the bull's going to run and chase him away. Well, now he reflects on it and he's thinking back. He's like, okay, I tried the little like curtain thingy that didn't work. So now I have a new idea. I'm gonna lasso this bull, and then I'm gonna jump on his back, and he's like, "I got you now." Well, this happens, right? So now that bull's just jerking him everywhere. He's learning something else though, because he's taking action. So now the curtain didn't work, and I don't know, does the rope actually work? Like, nope. Now he hits a wall and he slides into the bull poop, right? So now he's got to go back, lick his wounds, start all over, but now he has more wisdom to do it better and to do it better.
Yeah.
And he just keeps repeating this. This is the most important part. Let's learn from experience. So he's reflecting, he's thinking about it. So when we lay in bed at night and we think about what we did that day, what we accomplished that day, we shouldn't be thinking about this is funny because we shouldn't be thinking about what somebody said and what we should have said to make our egos feel better. Instead, we could be thinking about what somebody said and then what we could say better to move that conversation forward. So when you reflect, it's not about you. It's about the actual situation. And this is like the biggest aha that I had whenever I came up with skill stacking, because like I actually like built this for my wife. And like through talking with her and like through all these experiences, it's like, hey babe, like what's happening? Like, are you not thinking about this? Like, are you not thinking that we've already been in this situation? All we need to do is just do it different or do it better next time. And the answer was no. What I discovered is whenever she was reflecting on it, it was kind of like daunting. Like she was hating the experience or she was loving the experience. Either way, good or bad, it doesn't really matter. But it wasn't to how can I think about this to gain wisdom so I can do it better next time. And we got to always be forward projecting. That way we can do it better next time. You getting this, Carl?
Yeah. Yeah. My thing is I just got to take action,
Yeah.
you know, and then the rest of it will be whatever it's supposed to be.
Yeah. 100%. We got to take action. And if we fail to take action, just like J.K. Rowling says, you fail by default. Right? So that's the last thing I want to do, right? Like literally, I have this written down, I don't know how many different places, but essentially it's just, I don't want to wake up one day in my deathbed, looking back at my life saying, what if, right? Like, that's my nightmare. Like, I don't want to just wake up one day, however old, like God blesses me to be able to live, but like looking back and be like, man, what if I would have just continued to do whatever I'm doing now, right? Like live on YouTube, like whatever this is, right? Where would I be in a year, right? But no, Eric, like you quit within the first week, right? That's a nightmare to me. Same thing with real estate, right? Like when I first started real estate, I had everybody telling me it was a bad idea, right? No knowledge in real estate, literally like 22 hours away from any like family. And it was just nothing that was in my favor. But therefore, if I didn't start, I would have just ended up never moving forward. And like, what type of life is that? Right? So this is the skill stacking loop. All right, let's kind of break this down because this is extremely important whenever we reflect, Carl. So no matter what you discover, you can discover things on YouTube, you can discover things reading a book, you can discover things by joining a new mastermind, you can discover things on Netflix. Like you are always discovering something different, whether you want to or not.
Right.
The question is, are you gaining the abilities and the skills in order to be able to execute it at a high level? So it keeps going forward every time I move my mouse. See, I'm learning. I'm learning. So right now, today, you just discovered skill stacking. But now your next job is to learn. I want you to go and think about what the skill stacking loop is. And if you look at this image and just go around it, each little piece, and you're like, okay, I'm thinking about this. Like Eric explained that I was only discovering and then learning, like, what does it actually mean to learn? Well, in a nutshell, what it means is you need to go out and you need to gain the minimum amount of information that you need in order to execute. That's it. You don't need all the information. You need the very, very bare minimum information in order to go to the next stage, which is execute. This prevents the analysis paralysis, right? Like how many people get an analysis paralysis, right? Like with the Dill Boss project, that's one reason we don't want like 50 and 100 videos to watch, right? I want you to watch one video, go execute. Right? Everything is about action, 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 because that's the only way you're going to actually get results anyway. Right? You don't need more information. Majority of all the information is free. Like we live in a world where literally like, you hold up your iPhone and you have more power in this little thing than like the president in the, 20th century did. Right? Like it's amazing the power we have in our palms of our hands. So when we learn, we only need to learn just enough to go execute. Now, once we get that minimum information, we're going to go and we're going to make mistakes and we're going to create that feedback loop. Now you hit your wall, then you reflect, you take your lessons, you lick your wounds, and then you grab your new puzzle piece and you repeat this cycle over and over again until you win. Right? It's not one time, it's not two times, it's not three. Like it could be 100 times. Who cares? Do it until you win. Does that make sense, Carl?
Do it until you're through your wall and you're on your way. Yeah.
Yeah. And there's always going to be a new wall. Like this never goes away. Right? This never goes away. It's well, like for me, like building a portfolio and like, the wholesale game and the flipping game. Like it never goes away. There's always something else. There's always a new wall, and it's always my lack of wisdom that allows me to hit that wall. Sometimes it's just what's called a black swan, right? Just an unthinkable, uncontrolled event. So for instance, like my plumbing issue, all right, like me and Lori was talking about this thing, like it would have literally set us back minimum of 30K over this weekend because of this plumbing issue, right? Like that one rental that I'm talking about, it brings in us around 150 to 160K a year. And that one plumbing event would have probably wiped out all of our profit. But because I learned the skill stacking and I understand plumbing, was able to go out there and like actually trench it and dig it up and remove all the cast, just do all those things that needed to be done. Well, now we was able to get it done for around like 3K, right? Like that's manageable. Right now, the rest of the year after we put this thing back together, I'm still profiting. And then, on the other side, it's just like, well, Eric, I don't have those skills. Well, you don't need those skills. You just got to learn how to go out and find people to do those types of jobs. And like with a plumber, I mean, again, there's no short and easy and cheap way to fix something like I'm talking about. So that's one of those black swan events. And the only other option is figure out how to create more cash elsewhere to pay for it. That way it doesn't destroy your year in profit on your rental. Does that make sense,
Right.
Carl?
It does.
Yeah, I mean, it's two ways, right? Like you don't have to do the thing, right? You can absolutely develop a skill like sales, marketing, lead generation. And once you develop those skills, you can absolutely create cash that will turn around and pay a plumber to do that job. But you got to develop the skills.
Right.
Yeah. All right. So that is skill stacking. What do you think about skill stacking?
I think it's pretty amazing. And it kind of helps me realize that this is kind of part of the circle.
Yeah.
It's just, getting back to taking action. And then once I take action, then it'll just kind of work.
Yep. 100%, man. It always works whenever you give it enough action. It's just what always happens is, man, again, we get in those societal norms where we have those thoughts kind of trickle in. And also, maybe it's not even our thoughts, man. Your own environment. Like, if you surround yourself with the wrong people, they'll plant negative seeds, and those negative seeds will blossom into a toxic tree, and it will cast nothing but dark shadows everywhere. And you've got to protect yourself,
Yeah.
right? So, like, I mean, I went through this, man. I went through this when I was starting, and pretty much every one of my friends, they're still air traffic controllers. All right, and they'll probably be air traffic controllers till they retire. That just wasn't my path. I wanted more. But in order for me to separate and not go down that path, I had to essentially stop associating with them. Because every time I would show up to work after a job, after a deal, even if I cashed a 20, 30K check, like, I couldn't show up at work and talk about it because all I received was negativity. All I received from them is like, oh, well, you probably just got lucky this time. Or, oh, like, you probably don't do that often. Or it'll be like the got you dudes, like, they're always one up in you, right? And it was never that true camaraderie that you get from surrounding yourself with actual real entrepreneurs, right? People who understand that there's highs and there's lows and there's valleys in between. And the best thing you can do is to go and bounce things and ideas off of each other, which is the reason having a community, right? Like the Deal Boss Project is so important, like, so we can talk, so we can relate the bads with the goods, and you can share your wins. And when you do share your wins, it's not people beating you down. Does that make sense?
It does. It's just a matter of me changing. Where I'm at right now, I'm kind of in the middle of the desert as far as real estate goes and entrepreneurs. And just I've got to change where I am to get more positive feedback.
Exactly. Take action. Change where you are, right? So let's jump into marketing. I want to give you some information on marketing, because marketing can be overly complex as well. But in essence, there's only 3 channels. All right, there's only 3 marketing channels, and this is for real estate, to generate leads, to generate opportunities. All right, you have free. And with free, it's going to cost you time, way more time than money. That's the reason it's free. However, free still costs you money. All right, like, there's nothing 100% free. And I think me and you talked about this the other day when we was comparing like agent outreach versus direct to seller, right? There's a bunch of different free marketing strategies, which I'll show you in just a second. And then there's outbound. All right, with outbound is going to cost you a little bit of time and a little bit of money. All right, this is, I like outbound. I like outbound. All right, inbound. Inbound is where everybody wants to be. And inbound costs way more money than it does time. But there's a reason and there's a place in your operation and in your business when you plug each and every one of these. And it's really depending on where you are in your journey, what finances you have, what time you have. Because some people have more time than they do money, so it makes sense to spend the time. Other people have more money than they do time, so it makes sense to spend the time. Spend the money. So with inbound marketing, let's go ahead and get to this. I'm gonna skip forward a little bit. You wanna combine these. All right. So that was the big idea there. You want to combine these marketing strategies. So for instance, with free, we got agent outreach, wholesaler, MLS, door knocking, nursing home, attorneys. All right. The last thing I would recommend for somebody to start out with free marketing, go to like nursing homes and attorney. All right. There is an art to those conversations, and it's not cut and dry and clear to execute. Whenever you compare it to like agent outreach, wholesaler outreach, right? Agent outreach, super easy. Get on Zillow, get on the MLS, look at any agent. You have their email, you have their correct phone number. You can call them directly, super quick, and start having conversations with them. Wholesaler outreach, they're everywhere. You can get on any social media platform and find wholesalers. Your MLS offer system is a combine of both of those. And then door knocking is what you should actually stack on top of some of those marketing strategies. And we go deeper into that later. Now, the issue with free is it's unpredictable. But since it is so cheap, you're still paying for something. So you got your existing phone, your car, and you got free sources like Zillow, Realtor, Redfin.com, etc. And then there's outbound. All right, outbound. You got email, SMS, call, RVMs. With outbound, there is a time delay, right? So free, you don't know when that deal's coming. It's very unpredictable because you don't have set metrics. It's not like you can say, hey, I'm going to call 20 agents, and over time, if I call 20 agents, on average, I get, one deal for every 500 agents I contact, right? Like you can get some type of data points like that, but it's going to be more of waiting for those agents to do all of the outbound work that you could be doing if you had outbound in your operation, which again goes back to what I talked about. We need multiple vehicles. We need multiple marketing streams going out, but you get overwhelmed if you try to do a lot of these all at the same time whenever you first start it. So we want to build up to it. So with outbound, we're looking at 4+ months on average. All right. And that's consistent outbound marketing. You want at least, $200 every month to spend. And you know about this, Carl, but with the Deal Boss project, like everything we hook you up with, like this is super easy. All right, it's streamlined and it doesn't take as much time as other sources, like somebody sitting on the dialer all the time. Like now you can turn on automations, and a lot of those automations does all the heavy lifting for you. And then it turns into like a little inbound feature where you show up and you just clean out your inbox, right? Like that's inbound. But when we go to inbound, all right, you have direct mail, pay per lead, pay per click. There's newspaper, radio, and TV, which I don't even want to get into because those are very hard to measure marketing strategies. And anything you do should be measured. So for instance, direct mail, you'll be able to quickly and easily identify, hey, if I send 5,000 mailers, then I'm going to get 1 lead, 2 leads, right? Whatever that is, 50 leads, 100 leads. And then out of those leads, I'm going to get 1 deal, 2 deal, whatever that is, right? You're going to be able to build on those KPIs and those metrics, and then you're going to have a repeatable process. Now with inbound, on average, you're looking at like 1 to 3 months. It's still not instant, right? Like you're not just going to pick up and drop a pay-per lead and get your first one and end up with a deal, right? Can it happen? Absolutely. But is that the norm? No. And then another issue is spend. So earlier we talked about inbound. It takes more money than time. Well, you need like $5,000 to be able to spend and have no regrets, right? If you don't get a deal, you're okay. You're going to consistently spend that $5,000 again, right? Until it works. And a lot of people just aren't in those shoes. So
Not right now.
Yeah. So if you're not in those shoes, that's perfectly fine. You just got to understand where to start and then what it's going to take. Is it going to take more time, more money? And in most cases, it's going to take more time because we're going for cheaper lead generation strategies like outbound and free. Did I give you any clarity, Carl? I know I went through that pretty quick.
No, you explained it perfectly. It boils down to just me taking action. I mean,
after everything's said and done, I have to take action, and that's where it is.
Absolutely, man. All about the action. All right. And Carl, you didn't even tell me I wasn't sharing my screen.
Oh,
Yeah, so I had an illustration the whole time, but obviously I'm still learning here. So I made that mistake. Here, let me spend a little bit of time on this because this was the visual, right? So this is what we was talking about with free,
right.
outbound, inbound, right? And when you combine all of these or you combine versions of these, you start to win. You start to win really big because now your deal flow is very consistent and predictable. But until, like, if you're only doing one marketing strategy, well, when that marketing strategy stops working or something shifts, you don't have something else that's building deals and generating leads that actually converts to deals. So that was the big thing there that I wanted you to see.
So on my account, how do I turn on the automation? Or is it already there?
Yeah, it's already on.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, it's already on. The only issue is without having that LLC, your numbers, your text messages will not be delivered like they're supposed to.
Okay.
Yeah, that's the only issue. And hopefully Jen talked to you about that, but like that's not something you absolutely need right now, right? Like you just put it into your budget, and if it's not this month, maybe next month, maybe the month after, but you want to get to a point where you can create that one LLC and then we can get your phones verified and registered. That way you consistently get all this marketing out. Does that make sense?
Yep. I think I may have found something. I just got to do a little bit more investigation.
Perfect. Absolutely perfect. All right, so let's talk about lead generation. All right. I'm going to treat this like a game of Monopoly. And if we draw a little Monopoly board here,
Mm-hmm.
we've got our four corners. All right. And if this is go, what we want to do is we want to get around the board consistently so we can collect $200 every time, right? The issue is, Carl, is most people go around the board one time and then they're stuck in limbo, right? And they don't have another lead or another deal right behind the one that just paid them. So what we want to do is we want to build a lead generation machine that's constantly creating new opportunities. And this is where we talk about level 1 or stage 1. And a lot of people hate stage 1. The issue is stage 1 is free. All right. There's a lot of free strategies right here that we can implement with stage 1. So we have your call, your text, RVM, agent outreach, wholesaler outreach, etc., all within stage 1. And our only goal in stage 1 is to identify correct numbers who own properties. And as we build these lists up, then we get to move to stage 2. You got any questions on stage 1?
No.
Yeah. So with stage 1, this is where we're going to get our FUs. This is where we're going to get our wrong numbers, dead numbers. This is where you're going to get agents who aren't good agents. So for instance, with agents, we want to rank them. So there's unicorn agents. There's, we call them Mustangs. Mustang agents. and then there's duds. Duds you want to get rid of as soon as possible. All right, these are your agents who either they're really not in the business of real estate, or they're just really hard to work with and they only know one thing, and it's not really worth your time as an investor to do business with them. Then with your Mustangs, we can actually work with agents who are open-minded, who will give us a little bit of time of day to explain different types of solutions that we have for sellers. Unicorn agents, they're actually educated. All right, they will actually help us create good opportunities and a good win-win scenario for both seller and investor. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does.
But again, if you do agent outreach and you call 20 agents, but you don't have a ranking system like this, like, what are you accomplishing? Right? Like, you might end up getting a lead, you might end up getting one deal, great, but how many times are you going to be able to go around this board? Once, right? That's the answer, right? So as soon as we get past stage one, now we're starting to get into a little bit of the good stuff. And the good stuff starts with stage two. Now, stage two, this is our long-term nurture sequence. So there's no leads, there's no deals coming out of stage two. However, we do know how to get in touch with them every time. And because we know how to get in touch with them every time, now all we need to do is just wait, because time solves all issues and it creates all issues. So if that is true, well, this is our 90 and 60 day follow-ups. And as long as we consistently follow up with them, stage two will start to pump more deals and more leads into our lead generation machine. But if we don't have a stage one and we don't have a stage two, then what you got is what you got. So let me explain what I mean by what you got is what you got. Because now we're talking about stage three. Stage three, this is where your motivated sellers live. All right. These are actual leads. These are actual people who want to sell their home, one reason or another. And you are either trying to build rapport with them, the know, like, and trust factor, or you're trying to understand their situation a little bit more, and it's not really a timely manner. So in short, what I'm saying is this is your 30, 10, and 3 day follow-ups. All right. If you was running an operation with your acquisition manager, your closer, and lead manager, then your acquisition manager would stay right here in stage three, and they would set. So we call that a setter. They would constantly set appointments for your closer in the next stage, which is stage four. All right. But in your case, Carl, like, this is you as well. And most people, Carl, they want to live right here in stage three, and they never want to spend time in stage two and one. And what that causes is one-offs. It causes them to go around the Monopoly board one time, and then they're sitting in quicksand, waiting and wondering, what did they do that first time? And why can't they get another deal? Does that make sense?
Oh, it does. Yes.
Yes.
Thank you.
So with stage three, what you want to do is you want to consistently follow up with these people. But this is where you want to really spend some time. So if we draw that back out, your 30, 10, and 3 day follow-ups, like, we work the fire out of foreclosures right here. All right. So foreclosures, we know that they have a reason to sell. And because we know they have a reason to sell, we can drop foreclosures just right here all day long in the 3 day follow-up and put a setter on those calls. And then they're just setting appointments with the closer. Because these people, whether they want to admit it or not, they need a solution for their property. So let's move to stage 4. So stage 4, this is where in the Deal Boss project, it's all manual. All right, this is task follow up, and we break this into 3 phases. All right, so you have phase 1, which is quick and dirty. You have phase 2, which is your offers, and you have your phase 3, which is escrow or nurture. Okay. Now, to get around the board, keep in mind, we've got stage 1 that's constantly feeding stage 2. We got stage 2 that's consistently feeding stage 3. Then we've got stage 3 that's consistently feeding stage 4. Now, in stage 4, this is what everybody dreams of. Everybody who joins a real estate mastermind, looks at YouTube University, all they want to work is stage 4 leads. They want the correct phone number, they want a motivated seller, and they want a deal. All right. In stage 4, all you have to do is structure and figure out how to make a win-win scenario. That way it turns into a deal. All the other work is done. All right. The reason I'm saying that is because earlier we talked about inbound, outbound, and free marketing. And whenever you pay for inbound leads, you get to skip stage 2 and stage 3 because you already have the correct phone number and they're calling you with interest in selling their property or have a conversation about whatever their situation is. Does that make sense, Carl?
Oh, yes, it does. Yes.
Yeah. So you can pay to skip those 2 stages. But again, now you're consistently paying. All right. You're consistently having to pay to fill your stage 3 pipelines. And that's perfectly fine because now, let's just say that's pay per lead. So if you're running pay per lead in stage 3, well, it's going to continue to stack and compound. And maybe the pay per lead that you talked to last week or last month, they're finally ready. And now you have a follow-up system in place. And you're able to actually move that to stage 4. So whenever we talk about stage 4, one of the biggest issues that I see in newer investors is they spend a lot of time underwriting, comping, and analyzing the property. Like, stop. The property is the least of the property is the least of your worries until they make it to stage 4. And then even when they make it to stage 4, you don't really need to spend a lot of time until you get to the offer phase because there's so much to figure out. You have to ask probing questions, clarifying questions. You got to figure out different documents that's needed. Like there is more to getting a contract in real estate than just sending out a document and get them to sign it. And if anybody disagrees with me, then you can just ask a big investor how many contracts they actually have fall out, right? So they get it signed, they get it locked up, open escrow. Well, how many actually closes? How many actually crosses the finish line?
Not many.
Yeah, it's way less than they actually lock up, right? And there's nothing wrong with that. That is part of the business. There's no way around that. But you can minimize it by having a proven process where you're looking at them in a quick and dirty, having that verbal win-win scenario, even a written win-win scenario, and then you can move to the offer phase. And then after the offer phase, you're nurturing them to make sure that nothing comes up through title search or any of those situations, right? Where they need understanding. And the title company isn't going to follow up with them, let them know what's going on. They do the bare minimum. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does.
Awesome. Awesome. All right. So anyway, we went over a lot so far, Carl. What do you think? Any feedback?
Wow. This is gonna be a cool journey, and it's just a lot of learning that I need to do.
Yeah. Yeah, but one step at a time, right? What's your first thing that you're going to do?
Start making calls in the morning because without conversations, I have no business.
That's right. Without conversations, you have no business. You are 100% correct. And then all you have to do, let me make sure you understand this because this is what we talked about the other day. All you have to do on your buyers is rank them. You have, oops, let me use this one. You have catfish. You have your wild card. And then you have your players and your anchors.
Okay.
Okay. And if we want to identify these correctly, your catfish buyers, these are the ones that are just going to be wasting your time. They own no real estate. They don't have, like, even proofs of funds. Proof of funds is not a good way to decide if that's a buyer or not. All right, the way to decide if it's a buyer or not is to literally look at his portfolio and then ask questions, right? And it already armed you with all the information you need. You know exactly how many properties they own, where they own them at. Like, you have all the information. And you can even look and pull it up and create conversations off of those properties that you already know they own. And that's going to make it so much easier to get anchor buyers and players. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah. So just don't overcomplicate it. Worst case scenario, Carl, when you're on the phone with a buyer, until you get the experience and the reps, just mark everybody as a wild card. Our rule is nobody's an anchor until we actually done a deal with them. And players have to have, they have to have things put in place. All right. It's not a mom and pop investor. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does.
Cool. Yeah, I mean that's pretty easy, right?
It is now that I see it kind of laid out that way.
Awesome. All right, Carl. We're gonna go ahead and wrap up, man. If you need us tomorrow, you just reach out and let us know.
I will do.
All right, man. Stay blessed by the best. I'll talk to you soon.
Yes, sir. Bye.
Bye. All right.